Have you ever noticed something about men as they get older? A lot of them stop talking about their problems. Now, it's not because they don't have them, but because somewhere along the line they start to believe talking about my problems doesn't help. And a lot of that starts with a misunderstanding. Right now I want to tell you about my personal experiences and what I've observed about why men stop talking about their problems. A lot of the times, men and women in relationships try to solve the same problem. They just come at them from different attack angles. And sometimes men need to recognize that the both of us are trying. We're just using different parts of our brain to solve the same problem. See, most men are wired to solve problems. It's almost an instinct. When we hear about an issue, our mind immediately goes to one place. How do I fix it, and what's the solution? So when somebody tells us about a problem, our natural reaction is to try to help. We offer ideas and make suggestions, and we try to fix it. But here's something I didn't understand when I was younger. Not every problem somebody shares with you is a problem they want solved. Sometimes they just want to be heard. I forgot I should probably introduce myself. Hi, my name is Bruce Pelton, and I'm a divorced dad of 3 boys. I've had decades of experience with communication, relationships, and wisdom that I like to share on this channel. So have you ever learned something later in life that you wish you knew when you were younger? This is it. Men usually communicate to fix things. We want to offer solutions to a problem. This is our primal brain trying to stick a square peg in a square hole. We can't help it. We're just wired to operate this way. There is a usefulness to operating like this, but sometimes there's better ways. Women usually communicate to process things. They're normally nurturing, compassionate, and more in touch with emotions. So it's more important to be heard and understood because the feelings and emotion is what they're trying to solve for, not the square peg solution. And when those two approaches collide, something happens. The man starts to think he's helping, but the woman thinks he's trying to explain something that she already knows. She thinks he's trying to mansplain it to her. The man feels misunderstood and the woman feels talked down to. And suddenly 2 people feel like they're not being heard. I really wish I knew this earlier, but I used to think that offering a solution was the best way to help. If somebody had told me a problem, my mind immediately went into fixer mode. Here's what you should do and here's how to fix the problem. But over time, I started to realize that sometimes the other person wasn't looking for a solution at all. They just needed somebody to listen. And when I tried to fix it, what they heard instead was something like, "You don't know what you're talking about," which wasn't my intention, but intention and perception aren't always the same thing. It wasn't until much later in life, after a lot of reflection and reading, that I fully understood something important. Helping somebody doesn't always mean fixing their problems. Sometimes helping means listening long enough for them to feel understood. 99% of women know what they should do. They don't need a man to tell them how to do it. What they need is somebody to listen to them so they can talk it out until it makes sense to them. Now that I understand this, I like to say, God gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. Make sure you do twice as much listening as you do talking. You'll be way better off for that advice. After enough misunderstanding, some men start doing something else. They stop explaining. Not because they don't care, but because it feels like explaining things just creates more conflict. So they keep things to themselves and they try to solve problems internally. They carry things quietly over time, and that silence becomes a habit. Looking back now, I wish I understood that communication isn't always about having the right answer. Sometimes it's about creating a space for somebody else to just talk, to feel heard and understood. And sometimes the most helpful thing you can do in a conversation is simply listen. Unfortunately, men and women communicate with 2 totally different angles. Both want an ending to the issue, but how we communicate that to each other is the trick. And it's something some men never figure out. Instead, he shuts down and decides nobody wants to take my advice, so why do I even bother? Instead, as men, let's try to just be available and a sounding board for her to vent and be heard and recognized. Try not to offer solutions until she's actually asked for one. So instead of feeling like she doesn't want to take your advice, do twice as much listening as you do talking, and let me know how that works out for you. Because shutting down when you think she doesn't want to listen to you is creating another issue that you don't even recognize, and it was created by your own doing. One of the biggest lessons life teaches us over time is that understanding people is more often more important than trying to fix them. And sometimes the strongest thing you can do in a conversation is to listen more and say less. If this gave you something to think about, consider hitting the like and subscribe button. This channel is all about the real life lessons that most of us had to learn the hard way. and I'll see you in the next one.